Let me tell you about the moment a billionaire's world came crashing down. Victor Harrison stood frozen behind the marble column of his Beverly Hills mansion, his heart pounding so hard he could hear it in his ears. He'd just returned early from Japan, eager to surprise his family after 3 weeks away. The electric Mercedes was still warm in the driveway. His briefcase was in his hand. And the words he was hearing, they couldn't be real. "I've told you not to use the front entrance when I have guests." That was his wife, Sophia. But her voice, he'd never heard it like this before. Cold. Sharp. Cruel. "What kind of impression do you think this gives my clients' wives?" Victor's hands started to shake. He moved closer, careful to stay hidden, and what he saw next stopped his breath completely. There, in his gourmet kitchen, stood Grace Williams, the woman who had saved his life. The woman who had raised him when the whole world had given up on a 9-year-old boy with no family and no future. The woman who was more his mother than anyone who had ever lived. And she was wearing a maid's uniform. Grace's hands trembled as she held a cup of cold tea. Her shoulders were hunched. Her eyes were filled with fear. This wasn't the strong, dignified woman who had worked 3 jobs to give him a chance at life. This was someone broken. Someone defeated. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Sophia," Grace whispered. "I just wanted to. I don't care what you wanted." Sophia's laugh was like ice. "You're the maid here, not the queen of the house, just because my husband has this strange obsession with you." Victor felt something inside him shatter. Maid? Grace had moved into the guest wing a year ago because he'd insisted. No, begged. Her to finally live in comfort after decades of sacrifice. Sophia had always been so sweet to Grace when he was around. So caring. So kind. It had all been a lie. Victor's mind went back 32 years. He could see himself so clearly, a terrified 9-year-old boy sitting in a cold office at the foster care agency, waiting for anyone to want him. He'd been passed over so many times. Too old, they said. Too quiet. Too damaged from being abandoned by parents who decided a child was too much trouble. Then Grace Williams walked in. She was 35 then, a retired nurse living on her modest pension in Detroit's South Side. She had a small house and an even smaller savings account. By every logical measure, she had no business taking in a child. But Grace didn't operate on logic. She operated on love. "Hello, baby," she'd said, kneeling down to look him in the eyes. "My name is Grace. And if you'll have me, I'd like to be your mama." Nobody had ever called him baby before. Nobody had ever looked at him like he mattered. From that day forward, Grace gave him everything. She worked the night shift at one hospital, then the morning shift at another. On weekends, she cleaned offices just to afford his programming classes. When other kids had new clothes and fancy toys, Victor had something far more valuable. He had a mother who believed in him. He remembered coming home one day, crying because he'd failed a math test. Grace sat him down at their tiny kitchen table, exhausted from working 16 hours straight, and said, "Baby, failure is just practice for success. We'll try again tomorrow. And the day after that. And the day after that. Because that's what family does." She sold her own jewelry, pieces her grandmother had given her, to buy Victor his first computer when he was 12. That computer changed his life. He taught himself to code. He built programs. He dreamed bigger than Detroit's South Side. And Grace? She never asked for anything in return. Not once. When Victor got his first big contract at 23, he tried to pay her back. She refused. "You don't owe me money, baby," she said. "You owe the world kindness. Pass it forward." Now, at 41, Victor had built an $8 billion empire. Thompson Technologies was a household name. He had homes in 3 countries, cars that cost more than most people's houses, and enough wealth to last 10 lifetimes. And the one thing he'd wanted more than anything was to give Grace the life she deserved. That's why he'd insisted she move into the mansion. That's why he'd given her the guest wing with the beautiful garden view. That's why he'd told Sophia, Grace's family, treat her like the queen she is. Sophia had smiled and agreed. She'd hugged Grace. She'd called her mom in front of friends. All lies. Every single word. Victor couldn't confront Sophia. Not yet. Something told him that what he'd witnessed was just the surface. So he did what any tech billionaire would do. He went to his office and pulled up the mansion's security system. For 3 hours he watched. And with every video, his heart broke a little more. There was Sophia forcing Grace to eat leftovers, cold, half-eaten food, while she dined on gourmet meals in the main dining room. Grace sat alone in the basement, her arthritic hands shaking as she tried to warm the food on a small hot plate. There was Sophia hiding the remote control for the heating system during winter nights, leaving Grace shivering under thin blankets while the rest of the house stayed warm. There was Sophia throwing away letters that arrived for Grace from old friends in Detroit, intercepting even medical correspondence that Grace needed. But the video that destroyed Victor completely was from 2 weeks ago. Grace had prepared a special dinner. It was the 32nd anniversary of the day she'd adopted him, a day she'd always celebrated like it was Christmas and her birthday combined. She'd set the table with candles. She'd baked a cake with her own arthritic hands, even though it clearly caused her pain. She was waiting for Victor to come home from a business trip. Then Sophia walked in. "How pathetic," Sophia said to the camera, as if she knew someone would watch. An old black woman pretending to be the mother of a white billionaire. "That's delusional even for you, Grace." Sophia grabbed the cake and threw it in the trash. She blew out the candles. And then she forced Grace to clean everything up before Victor arrived home. When Victor had called from his trip to ask if Grace enjoyed the surprise he'd asked Sophia to arrange, flowers and a special dinner, his wife had lied without hesitation. "Oh, she loved it, honey," she cried. "She said you're the best son a mother could have." Grace had cried. Victor could see it in the recording. But not from joy. From humiliation. From loneliness. She'd eaten a cold sandwich in the basement while Sophia posted fake photos on social media, pretending they'd had a wonderful family celebration. Victor closed his laptop, his hands shaking with rage. But then he remembered something Grace had taught him when he was 12 years old. He'd come home with a black eye after fighting boys who'd called him names. Grace had cleaned his wounds and said, "Baby, some people will try to make you feel small because they feel small inside. But you need to remember, true strength isn't about hitting harder or shouting louder. True strength is patient. It waits. It prepares. And when the moment comes, it doesn't just win. It teaches a lesson that will never be forgotten." Victor took a deep breath. Sophia had spent months destroying the woman who'd given him life. Now it was time for her to learn what happens when you underestimate a son protecting his mother. What Sophia didn't know was that every cruel word, every calculated lie, every moment of sadism was building the foundation of her own destruction. And Victor Harrison was about to teach her the most expensive lesson anyone could ever learn. Victor didn't sleep that night. He couldn't. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Grace's trembling hands, her hunched shoulders, her eyes filled with fear. But Victor had learned something important from building an $8 billion company. Emotion without strategy is just noise. So while his heart burned with rage, his mind stayed cold and focused. The next morning, he called his assistant. "I need a private investigator. The best. Someone who specializes in domestic abuse cases. And I need them today." By afternoon, Victor was sitting across from Raymond Cole in a discreet downtown office, far from the social circles of Beverly Hills where Sophia might recognize him. Raymond was in his 50s, with gray hair and eyes that had seen every kind of human cruelty. Victor showed him the security footage. All of it. Every painful second. Raymond watched in silence, taking notes. When the videos ended, he looked up at Victor and said, "This is systematic abuse. And this documentation she's creating about your mother's supposed confusion? That's preparation for involuntary commitment. I've seen it before." Victor felt his stomach drop. "What do you mean?" "She's building a case to have your mother declared mentally incompetent. Once she has that, she can institutionalize her legally. And you won't be able to stop it without proof that she's lying." Raymond connected a device to Victor's laptop. "We need full access to her phone and computer. If she's documenting lies about your mother, she's leaving digital traces. And if I know people like this, she's not working alone." Victor thought about Friday's charity dinner. Sophia always left her phone charging in their bedroom all night. "I can get you 2 hours with her devices this Friday. That's all I need." But what Raymond found went far beyond what Victor had imagined. The forensic analysis revealed a private WhatsApp group called Beverly Hills Elite Wives. 6 women. 6 wealthy, privileged women who spent their days at spas and charity lunches. And their nights? They spent those planning how to get rid of inconvenient family members. Victor read the messages, his blood running colder with each word. "David's old maid is getting more and more confused," Sophia had written. "Yesterday I found her trying to use the master bathroom again. I had to remind her where she belongs." The responses from her friends were just as vicious. "At least you have patience, dear. I would have sent her back to the ghetto where she belongs. That was Jennifer Walsh, wife of a real estate mogul. Victor needs to understand that charity has its limits. It's one thing to help these people. It's another to turn your home into a shelter. That was Patricia Sterling, heiress to a banking fortune. But it was Sophia's response that made Victor's hands shake with rage. Don't worry, girls. I'm documenting all her episodes. Once I have enough evidence of dementia and incapacity, I'll convince Victor she needs professional care in an institution. Problem solved permanently. These weren't just cruel words. This was a coordinated conspiracy to abuse elderly people whose only crime was being inconvenient to their wealthy families. Raymond looked up from his computer. Mr. Harrison, this goes beyond your wife. If we expose this, we could bring down a whole network of elder abuse in Beverly Hills. Victor didn't hesitate. Then that's exactly what we're going to do. But Sophia was moving faster than Victor had anticipated. His lawyer, James Walsh, called him 2 days later with urgent news. Victor, my contacts tell me Sophia is consulting with guardianship attorneys. She's claiming Grace has advanced dementia and needs a legal guardian. Victor's heart stopped. What does that mean? If she gets a guardianship order, she'll have legal power to institutionalize Grace against her will. She could even cut off Grace's contact with you, claiming it's in her best interest. Over my dead body. Then we need to move fast. I'll prepare a counterpetition and revoke any power of attorney Sophia has over Grace's affairs. Won't that alert her that I'm investigating? Probably. But Victor, if we don't act, she could have Grace committed within days. That evening, Victor found Grace alone in the garden, sitting on a small wooden bench. It was the only personal thing she'd ever asked for in a year of living in the mansion. Just a simple bench where she could watch the stars. He sat down beside her. Mom, I need to ask you something. And I need you to be honest with me. Grace turned to him with those eyes that had seen so much pain, so much struggle, but never lost their kindness. Of course, baby. What is it? Has Sophia been treating you well when I'm not around? For a long moment, Grace said nothing. Victor could see her struggling, wanting to protect him from the truth, but also trusting him as the man she'd raised to face injustice. She has her concerns, Grace finally said, choosing her words carefully. Sometimes I think, maybe I should go back to Detroit. Maybe I'm too old to adapt to a place like this. Mom, look at me. Victor took her hands. They were still strong, despite the arthritis. Still the hands that had held him when he cried as a child. You've adapted to much harder things. You came from Taiwan, learned English, worked 3 jobs, raised me alone. Don't let anyone make you feel like you don't belong wherever you choose to be. Tears filled Grace's eyes. Sometimes I forget what a brave boy you were. Always defending others. Always fighting injustice. I'm still that boy, Mom. And now it's my turn to defend you. As they sat together in the garden, Victor saw Sophia watching from the second-floor window, her phone pressed to her ear. She was probably reporting to her friends, adding more fake evidence of Grace's confusion. Let her, Victor thought. Every call, every message, every moment of cruelty is being documented. Sophia had made one fatal mistake. She'd attacked the wrong person. Because Grace Williams hadn't just raised any child. She'd raised a fighter. A strategist. Someone who understood that sometimes justice requires perfect timing and absolute precision. Friday evening arrived. The charity dinner Sophia had been planning for months. She saw it as her victory celebration, the night before Grace would be taken away forever. Victor watched his wife descend the grand staircase in her designer dress, diamonds glittering at her throat. She was radiant, confident, already tasting her triumph. She didn't notice that Grace was no longer wearing the maid's uniform. Victor had burned every piece of it and replaced them with beautiful, dignified clothes. Honey, Sophia said, touching up her lipstick in the hallway mirror. The Sunny Acres van is coming Monday to pick up your mother. I've already signed all the paperwork. Problem solved forever. Victor pulled out his phone. That's interesting, because I just got a very enlightening call from Dr. Peterson at Sunny Acres. Sophia's smile faltered slightly. What kind of call? He wanted to confirm that I'd actually authorized you to forge my signature on the admission documents. Victor showed her the phone screen. Apparently, falsifying medical documents is a federal crime. The color drained from Sophia's face. I don't know what you're talking about. It's also interesting, Victor continued, his voice deadly calm, how meticulously you documented my mother's episodes of dementia. especially considering she passed all the cognitive tests I secretly arranged last week with flying colors. You spied on me? No. I protected my family from a sociopath. Victor opened the security camera app on his phone. Grace, please come here. Grace appeared in the doorway. But this wasn't the broken woman Sophia had spent months destroying. Grace stood tall, her shoulders back, her eyes clear and strong. Sophia stared at her in horror. Something had changed. The power dynamic had shifted. Grace has something to say, Sophia, Victor said. In fact, she has months of things to say. Grace's voice was steady and strong. Your wife forced me to sleep in the freezing basement during winter. She made me eat cold leftovers on the floor. She called me names I won't repeat. She destroyed the birthday cake I made for our family. Sophia tried to protest, but Victor raised his hand. Oh, but there's more. Much more. He connected his phone to the giant television in the living room. The WhatsApp messages from the Beverly Hills Elite Wives group filled the screen in high definition. Every racist word. Every cruel plan. Every moment of calculated sadism. David's old maid is getting more and more confused, Victor read aloud in Sophia's own words. I had to remind her where she belongs. Sophia's face went white. You can't, that's private. You know what else is interesting? Jennifer Walsh, Patricia Sterling, all your friends. They don't know you saved these conversations. And tonight at the charity dinner, this will be projected for the entire Beverly Hills elite to see. You wouldn't dare. I already have. Victor showed a series of notifications on his phone. TMZ. LA Times. Page 6. They all have the story. Beverly Hills Elite Wives run elder abuse scheme. Including photos of you forcing my mother to wear a maid's uniform. Sophia collapsed into a chair, reality finally hitting her. My life, my reputation, you've destroyed everything. I didn't destroy anything. You built your life on cruelty and lies. I just turned on the lights. Sophia's phone started ringing. First Jennifer Walsh. Sophia, what the hell are those photos on TMZ? Then Patricia Sterling. You've gotten us all into huge trouble. And there's more, Victor continued, relentless. My lawyer has filed for divorce. You're leaving this house with exactly what you brought when you arrived. Nothing. The prenuptial agreement you signed is very clear about infidelity and family abuse. Prenup? You said we didn't need one. I lied. Just like you lied about everything else. Victor leaned forward, his voice cold as ice. And you know what the best part is? All your fake documentation about my mother's dementia. It's perfect evidence of attempted medical fraud. The FBI is already interested. Sophia tried one last desperate move. Please, Victor. We can work this out. I'll change. Grace can stay. We'll go to therapy. Anything. The time to change was before you turned the woman who raised me into your victim. Grace approached Sophia for the first time in months without fear. She looked down at the woman who had tried to break her and said quietly, You don't have to change for me, ma'am. You just have to get out of my family's life. Sophia's lawyer called. I can no longer represent you. Conflict of interest. Her friends were calling, panicking, angry, desperate to distance themselves. There's a car waiting outside, Victor said calmly. Your bags are already inside. And Sophia, if you try any reprisals against my mother or me, remember, I have resources you can't even imagine. And now I know exactly what kind of person you really are. As Sophia walked out of the mansion for the last time, she still didn't understand the full scope of what Victor had orchestrated. The national scandal. The FBI investigation. The complete destruction of her social standing. She'd underestimated what a son would do to protect his mother. 1 year later, Grace stood in front of 30 children at the community center, her voice strong and clear. Remember, kids, she said, holding up a laptop. Technology is a tool for justice. You can use it to build bridges where others build walls. Victor watched from the back of the room, his heart full. At 68, Grace radiated life. The fear was gone. The hunched shoulders were gone. This was the woman he remembered from childhood. Strong, dignified, unbreakable. The Ruth Williams Community Center for Youth Technology had opened 6 months ago. Free programming classes for underprivileged kids. Scholarships for college. Mentorship programs. Everything Grace had done for him, now available to hundreds of children. Later, as they drove home together, Grace turned to him. Do you know why we won? Why, Mom? Because you remembered that true strength isn't about having power. It's about using it to protect the people we love. Victor had received a message from Sophia last week. Just 3 words. Can we talk? He deleted it without responding. Sophia now lived in a modest apartment across town, surviving on a limited divorce settlement. Her former friends crossed the street to avoid her. The scandal had made her a pariah in every social circle from Beverly Hills to Manhattan. Some bridges, once burned by cruelty, should never be rebuilt. As they pulled into the driveway of the mansion, Grace's home now, truly and completely, Victor thought about everything that had happened. Sophia had tried to destroy Grace because she saw her as less than human, as an inconvenience, as someone who didn't belong in a world of wealth and privilege. But she'd forgotten something crucial. Grace Williams had survived poverty, racism, exhaustion, and sacrifice. She'd raised a boy nobody wanted into a man everyone respected. She'd turned love into an empire more powerful than any amount of money. You can't destroy someone like that. You can only reveal your own emptiness in the attempt. "I love you, Mom," Victor said as they walked inside together. Grace squeezed his hand. "I love you too, baby. Always have. Always will." And in that moment, Victor understood the greatest lesson of his life. The best revenge isn't hurting those who hurt you. It's proving that love, real, sacrificial, unconditional love, will always be stronger than hate. Defending your family isn't just the right thing to do. It's the only thing that matters. If this story touched your heart, remember, the greatest wealth we can ever have is the people who love us unconditionally. Protect them, honor them, and never let anyone make them feel small. Because family, real family, isn't about blood or money. It's about who shows up, who sacrifices, and who loves you when the whole world walks away.